The porch was his sanctuary, the one place where Marcus Tate could breathe. A double amputee, he'd lost both legs in a factory accident 5 years ago, and now, at 34, he was just trying to live his damn life. But that humid August evening in suburban Ohio, 2 self-proclaimed HOA enforcement officers stormed up his steps, screaming about a mailbox that was half an inch too tall. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care that Marcus, trembling in his wheelchair, was sobbing as they yanked him onto the splintered wood, his screams echoing down the quiet street. This wasn't about a mailbox. It was about power, about petty tyrants drunk on their own authority, thinking they could bully anyone into submission. Marcus wasn't just a man. He was a symbol of everything they thought they could crush. The neighborhood watched, frozen, as these 2 goons, Karen Baxter and her lackey, Greg Holt, dragged him like a rag doll, their faces twisted with smug satisfaction. By the time they were done, Marcus was bruised, humiliated, and left sprawled in his own yard, while Karen sneered, "Follow the rules next time, cripple." The video hit the internet like a Molotov cocktail. Marcus's neighbor, a quiet teenager named Lily, had recorded the whole thing on her phone, her hands shaking as she captured every second of the brutality. Posted to X at 9:17 p.m., it racked up 2 million views by midnight. The comments exploded. Who the hell do these HOA Nazis think they are? This is America, not a dictatorship. Karen's gonna regret this. The internet didn't just react, it roared. Hashtags like Justice for Marcus and Karen Takedown trended worldwide, and the outrage wasn't just online. It was personal. People shared stories of their own HOA nightmares, of power-tripping busybodies who'd find them for faded shutters or a single weed in their lawn. Marcus's story wasn't just his, it was everyone's. The truth unraveled faster than Karen and Greg could spin it. They weren't even real cops. The HOA had no legal authority to enforce anything beyond sending strongly worded letters. Karen, a 52-year-old real estate agent with a bleach blonde bob and a penchant for yelling at baristas, had started calling herself the HOA compliance director after bullying her way onto the board. Greg, her 40-year-old sidekick, was a failed security guard who'd been fired for excessive force. Their uniforms were cheap Amazon vests with iron-on patches, and their authority was a fantasy they'd built to terrorize the neighborhood. Public records dug up by X users showed Karen had a history of lawsuits suing neighbors, her ex-husband, even a dog groomer for emotional distress. Greg wasn't much better. His rap sheet included a bar fight and a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend. The neighborhood's ex-posts painted a clearer picture. Karen had been terrorizing residents for years, fining an elderly widow $500 for a cracked bird bath, threatening to foreclose on a single mom's home over an unpainted fence, demanding a veteran remove his American flag because it clashed with the HOA's aesthetic. Marcus's mailbox? It was an excuse. He'd been on Karen's radar since he moved in, a black disabled man in her pristine, mostly white cul-de-sac. Neighbors whispered she'd called him an eyesore at a board meeting. The internet didn't just uncover their lies, it ripped their masks off. By morning, Karen's real estate page was flooded with 1-star reviews, and Greg's LinkedIn was a graveyard of mocking comments. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. The confrontation came at the HOA's emergency meeting 3 days later, held in the community center's stuffy basement. Over 200 residents packed the room, their anger a living thing, crackling in the air. Karen stood at the podium, her face a mask of defiance, clutching a gavel like it was a scepter. "This is a private organization," she snapped, "and we have every right to enforce our standards." Greg, slouched beside her, nodded like a bobblehead, his eyes darting nervously. The crowd wasn't having it. "You assaulted a disabled man," shouted a woman in the back, her voice shaking with rage. "You're not cops, you're thugs," another yelled. The room erupted, fists pounding tables, voices overlapping in a chorus of fury. Then came Ryan Callahan, a 38-year-old off-duty fireman who'd lived 2 streets over for a decade. 6'3", built like a linebacker, He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Ryan had been at the fire station when the video hit X, and he'd driven home that night, his blood boiling. He'd seen men like Marcus pull themselves through hell and back, men who'd fought wars or survived disasters, only to be kicked down by people like Karen. He stepped to the front, his work boots heavy on the linoleum, and stared Karen down. "You touched Marcus," he said, his voice low, lethal. "You drag a man with no legs out of his home for a mailbox." The room went silent. Karen's smirk faltered. Greg shifted, sweat beading on his forehead. Ryan didn't stop. He pulled out his phone, reading aloud from the HOA's own bylaws. No physical enforcement, no authority to touch residents, no power to act without a vote. "You broke every rule you claim to love," he said, his eyes never leaving Karen's. "And you're done." The crowd roared, chanting, "Resign! Resign!" Karen tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. "This is my community." But Ryan wasn't finished. He recounted every story he'd heard, every fine, every threat, every neighbor she'd humiliated. When he mentioned Marcus, his voice cracked, and the room fell to the raw, human pain of a man defending another's dignity. Then it got physical. Greg, red-faced and desperate, lunged at Ryan, shouting, "You can't talk to us like that." Bad move. Ryan, trained to handle chaos, sidestepped and grabbed Greg's arm, twisting it behind his back with a sickening pop. Greg yelped, collapsing to his knees, his shoulder visibly out of socket. Karen screamed, swinging her gavel like a weapon, but Ryan caught her wrist mid-air, his grip iron. "Sit down," he growled. She froze, her bravado crumbling. The crowd surged forward, phones out, live streaming every second. By the time security pulled Ryan off, Greg was whimpering, clutching his arm, and Karen was hyperventilating, her perfectly curated image shattered. The fallout was swift and brutal. Karen and Greg were ousted from the HOA board that night, the vote unanimous. The police arrived, not for Marcus this time, but for Karen and Greg, who faced charges of assault and battery. Ex-users tracked every update. The mugshots, the court dates, the lawyer's pathetic attempt to call it a misunderstanding. Karen's real estate license was suspended after her brokerage dropped her, citing reputational damage. Greg lost his part-time gig at a vape shop, his name now synonymous with HOA goon. The internet wasn't done either. Petitions circulated to dissolve the HOA entirely, gaining 10,000 signatures in a week. Marcus's GoFundMe, started by Lily, raised $150,000 for his medical bills and a new wheelchair-accessible ramp. But the real change was deeper. The neighborhood wasn't just a collection of houses, Anna Maria, it was a community. People who'd never spoken before now checked on each other, shared meals, organized block parties. Marcus, once a stranger, became a friend, his porch now a gathering spot for neighbors who brought him coffee and stories. The HOA's iron grip was gone, replaced by a shared resolve to never let petty power destroy them again. Karen and Greg weren't just defeated. They were erased, their names a cautionary tale whispered in suburban backyards across the country. Marcus sat on his porch a month later, the sunset painting the sky orange, his new ramp gleaming. He wasn't broken anymore, he was whole, surrounded by people who saw him, not his chair. Ryan stopped by, tossing him a beer. "You good, man?" he asked. Marcus grinned, cracking the can open. Better than ever. They clinked cans, the sound sharp in the quiet evening. The world had seen their fight, and it had changed. Not just for Marcus, but for everyone who'd ever been stepped on by someone who thought they could get away with it. Karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. This story isn't just about Marcus or Karen, it's about us. About fighting back when the world tries to grind you down. Share it, talk about it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep the fire burning. Thank you for listening, for caring, for standing up.